Good morning, children. Welcome to the chapter Federalism once again. I just saw that some of you have asked me to explain federalism once again. Let me tell you the definition of federalism once again. Federalism is a system of government in which the power is divided between the central authority and various constituent units of the country. The power is divided between a central authority and different constituent units of the country. I am giving you the example of our own country, that is India. In India, the main power lies in the hands of the central government, but it is also distributed among various states. Okay, India is a federal country. We can call India an example of federalism because the power is divided between the central government, that is the union government, and various constituent units of the country. What are the constituent units? The different states are called the constituent units. As I told you in the last class, that the central government or the union government has its own powers. There's no doubt about it. But the state also has its own power. The state government has been given separate powers. The state government is not bound to take permission for each and every action or each and every step that it has to take from the central government. The central government or the union government cannot interfere in the functioning of the state government all the time. That means autonomy or liberal administration, a free administration has been given to the state governments. They can function in whichever manner they want to. The chief minister and his team of ministers, the council of ministers, can decide matters. The union government will not all the time interfere in the matters of the state government. So this is what is federalism. Now, last time in my class, I had stopped with coming together and holding together federations. I hope all of you have revised those things, and please keep reading the chapter, children, through this NCERT textbook. Since you are in a board class now, so you will have to read the chapter many times. Okay, please read the chapters in detail. Keep noting down things in your rough copy which you think that this line you must learn. This is an important paragraph. Keep noting down those things and keep learning those things also, because in the board exams you never know which line may become your question. You don't have to only stick to a limited set of questions now. You should know the whole chapter in detail. Okay, so please keep revising everything, and this is applicable to all the subjects, not only social science or not only English, but it is applicable for all the subjects. Please revise everything and note down your problems. Wherever you are unable to understand, note down the problems, so that when we meet later on, after some time, we will definitely meet again. Then you can ask your problems in the class and all doubts will be cleared. Now today we will take up a very simple but a very important topic in federalism, that is the three lists that are provided by the Constitution of India. You must have heard, I am very sure, the union list, the state list, and concurrent list. Okay, if you have paper and pen with you, you can note down the names of these three lists: the union list, the state list, and the concurrent list. These are the three lists which are provided by the Constitution of India. Now, what is union list? This is going to be your another question. Okay, today again, as in the last class I told you some questions, today also I will tell you some questions and their answers as well, which you will have to write in your copies. So the first question for today will be, what is union list? Now listen to the answer. I will explain this also. The union list has subjects of national importance. As the heading itself suggests, union list. That means that list which contains subjects of national importance. National importance means those subjects which concern the whole country by and large. It is not meant for a particular region, it is not meant for a particular state, but it is a matter of concern, a matter of importance for the whole country. So the union list has subjects of national importance. The examples are defense of the country. This also you will have to write in the answer. Examples. Defense of the country, you must be understanding very well that defense of the country is a national issue. It is not the issue of a province or of a village or of a municipal, a particular municipal area, or of only Lucknow, only Uttar Pradesh, only Gujarat. No. Each region of the country is equally important, each state of the country is equally important, and by and large we can say the whole country is very important, and the defense of the whole country is a matter of national concern. So this subject will come under the list of union list. Defense of the country, then foreign affairs, banking, currency, etc. These are some subjects. Okay, later on I will give you many more subjects which will come in the union list, state list and concurrent list. Just now you write these examples: defense of the country, foreign affairs, banking, currency, etc. These are the subjects which come under union list. Another important thing which you must remember in this list, it is not necessary to write in the answer, but you must remember that the union government alone can make laws on subjects in the union list. The union government, that is the central government alone, can make laws on subjects in the union list. That means whether it is banking, currency or defense of the country or foreign affairs, whatever subjects come in the union list, only the central government has the authority to make laws on these subjects. This authority has not been given to the state governments. Next, second is state list. Second list is the state list. Now, as from the heading itself, you could guess that the union list contained subjects of national concern, national importance. Now the state list has those subjects which are of local importance or which are important for the state. Now I am dictating so that you can write in the form of a question. The question will be, what do you mean by state list? State list has subjects of state and local importance. State list has subjects of state and local importance. That means those subjects which are you can say which are important in their own states, in their own regions or in their own locality. For example, police. Now police is a very common example of this state list because now Lucknow has its own police. They have their own departments, they have their own heads. Similarly, in other areas, in other regions, in other states. Okay, so at the local level also, if we take local level, then we can talk about Lucknow only. If we take as a state, then we can take up the matters of concerning the police in Uttar Pradesh. But there is no need to look into the functioning of the police or the departments of the police in Madhya Pradesh, in Gujarat, in Rajasthan, in Karnataka. There is no need. Every state, every region has its own police, their own setup, their own system of functioning. Okay, so police will come under such kind of subjects like police will come under state list. Another is trade, another commerce, then agriculture. These are matters which concern or which are separate for each state. Each state looks into their own matters separately. They are not governed by the central government, or they are not matters, you can say, collectively which are of national importance. They are matters of state importance. Each state has its own matters of trade and commerce. Each state has its own matters of agriculture. So such matters which are different for every state. You can't compare, or you can't take the whole country's agriculture altogether. If you want to compare, Punjab has its own agricultural produce, they have their own crops. UP has different crops which we grow. Similarly, different states have different crops which they grow, different their production is different, of different kind. So such lists which are a matter of importance for their own state will come under state list. Now, the state government alone can make laws on these subjects. As in the union list, you must have heard, I told you that the union government can make laws on these subjects only. Only the union government can make laws on the subjects in the union list. Similarly, the state government can make laws in the subjects which are in the state list. The third is the concurrent list. Third category is the concurrent list. What is this now? Subjects of common interest. There are some subjects which are common, which are in union list also, and they are in the state list also. Those subjects which are common are called to be in the concurrent list. Subjects of common interest to both the union and the state government is called the concurrent list. So the third question will be, what do you mean by concurrent list? You will write, a concurrent list includes subjects of common interest to both the union and the state government. I am repeating, the concurrent lists include subjects of common interest to both union and state governments. Example, education. Education is a national issue also, and it can be taken separately as a state issue also. Then marriage, trade unions, etc. So such common topics which are national issues also and which are state issues also, they come under this third category of concurrent list. Both union and state governments can make laws on these subjects. Now, this is another peculiar thing about the concurrent list. As I told you, in the union list, only the central government can make laws. In the state list, only the state government could make laws. Now, in the concurrent list, both the state government and the union government can make laws on these subjects. But, there is a but also. In case there is any conflict, in case any conflict arises between the union government and the state government, between the decisions made by the laws made by the union government and the state government on the subjects of the concurrent list, then whose will prevail? Obviously, the will of the union will prevail. Why? Because it is the central government. It is the highest authority in the government. So, the will of the central government or the union government will prevail. There are some subjects which do not come in any of these three lists. This is also very important, children. Please don't ignore this. There are some subjects which do not come under any of these three lists. They were added after the constitution was made. A very important example is computer software. Computer software. This subject was added very much later when the constitution was made. So these subjects which are added in the lists which was made after the constitution, much later after the constitution was made, is called the fourth category, that is residuary subjects. Residuary, residuary. Residuary. You must have heard of this word residue in science. Residue means what? Leftover. Leftover is the residue. So residuary subjects means the leftover subjects. Leftover from where? That means they don't come in the union list also, they don't come in the state list also, and they don't come in the concurrent list also. They are such subjects which were added much later when the constitution was made. Example, computer software. Okay, so your fourth question here will be, what do you mean by residuary subjects? The answer will be, there are some subjects which do not come in any of these three lists, that is the union list, the state list and the concurrent lists. They were added after the constitution was made. They are called residuary subjects. Example, computer software. Now children, here you must remember, whether it is your classwork copy or your exam, internal exams or board exams, please don't forget to write examples. If you are writing the definition of union list or state list or concurrent list or residuary subjects, definition will give you marks, but please mention the example. Even if the question is not asking you to mention the example, then also write the example, because examples are very important in these questions. So I am sure you must have understood what is meant by residuary subjects. Those subjects which don't come in these three lists but they were later on added much after the constitution was made, they are called residuary subjects. Example is computer software. The union government has the power to legislate or make laws on them. Now, who makes laws on these residuary subjects? The union government. The union government has the power to legislate. Legislate means to make laws on these residuary subjects. Okay, so I am very sure this much you have understood. The union list, state list, concurrent list and residuary subjects. Now, how is federalism practiced? How is federalism practiced? You have seen that India is a federal country. The powers are divided between the main central authority and the constituent units of the country. But how is federalism practiced? Now I am reading some of the important things. Constitutional provisions are necessary for the success of federalism, but these are not sufficient. If the federal experiment has succeeded in India, it is not merely because of the clearly laid out constitutional provisions. The real success of federalism in India can be attributed to the nature of democratic politics in our country. This ensured the spirit of federalism, respect for diversity and desire for living together became shared ideals in our country. Now comes the main heading, children. Let us look at some of the major ways in which this happened. What happened? How federalism was practiced in India. Linguistic states. Linguistic means related to language. Linguistic states. I will read and I will keep on explaining, so pay attention. The creation of linguistic states was the first and the major major test for democratic politics in our country. If you look at the political map of India when it began its journey as a democracy in 1947 and that of 2013, you will be surprised by the extent of changes. Many old states vanished and many states have been created. Areas, boundaries and names of states have been changed. You must have seen this. Many new states have come up. Many changes have been made in the names of the states as well. In 1947, the boundaries of several old states of India were changed in order to create new states. This was done to ensure that people who spoke the same language lived in the same state. I am reading this again. In 1947, the boundaries of several old states of India were changed in order to create new states. This was done to ensure that people who spoke the same language lived in the same state. That means in 1947, some new states were created so that people speaking particular languages could live in particular states. This was done to ensure that people who spoke the same language lived in the same state. Some states were created not on the basis of language but to recognize differences based on culture, ethnicity, or geography. These include states like Nagaland, Uttarakhand, and Jharkhand. When the demand for formation of states on the basis of language was raised, some national leaders feared that it would lead to the disintegration of the country. So, when this proposal was laid down in 1947, that the states should be formed on the basis of the language, the people who are speaking one kind of language should reside in one area that will be termed as their state. When this kind of suggestion was laid down, the leaders of the country feared that it would lead to disintegration of the country. That means it is going to be a threat to the unity of the country. The people will start dividing themselves on the basis of languages, and the whole country later on will be divided. There will be no unity in the country. The central government resisted linguistic states for some time, but the experience has shown that the formation of linguistic states has actually made the country more united. Now, here you must keep in mind that earlier, as I just told you, some of the leaders of the country feared that it would disunite the country, it would disintegrate the country, but actually this did not happen. And the experience shows that formation of linguistic states has actually made the country more united. It has also made administration easier. As you must be seeing, especially in southern India, we see that in southern India, all people, 90% people or more even, are South Indians. They speak South Indian languages, isn't it? In UP, we don't find majority speaking South Indian languages. Similarly, in South India, you will not find majority speaking Hindi. A very small number of people or very little population must be there who speaks Hindi, or maybe they are Gujaratis or they are Maharashtrians, isn't it? Basically, they are South Indian people and they speak South Indian languages. So we see here that creating states on the basis of languages did not prove harmful. It did not hinder the unity of the country, but it was seen that people were more united, and when linguistic policy was adopted, it also helped in the administration of the country. Now, next is language policy. Language policy. A second test for Indian Federation is the language policy. Our constitution did not give the status of national language to any one language. Pay attention, it's a very important thing which I am reading. Our constitution did not give the status of national language to any one language. Hindi was identified as the official language, but Hindi is the mother tongue of only about 40% of the Indians. Therefore, there were many safeguards to protect other languages. So, what are we reading till now? In language policy, our constitution did not give the status of national language to any one language. That means all languages were given their own place, their own importance, and no one language was made the official language. Hindi was used as the official language, was identified as the official language, but when it was found that Hindi is only spoken by 40% of Indians. Therefore, there were many other safeguards to protect other languages. Many other safeguards, that means many other ways were chosen to protect other languages and to promote other languages. To protect other languages. Besides Hindi, there are 21 other languages recognized as scheduled languages by the Constitution. A candidate in an examination conducted for the central government positions may opt to take the examination in any of these languages. Now, this is the liberty given by the Constitution of India, that if you are not a person whose mother tongue is Hindi, You are suppose a Gujarati, or you speak Kannada or any other language, your mother tongue is any other language, it is not Hindi, then you are free to give national level exams in your mother tongue. You are free to do that. Nobody can stop you. A candidate in an examination conducted for the central government positions may opt to take the examination in any of these languages. 21 languages are there other than Hindi. So if you are a person who has any other language as your mother tongue, then you can choose that language. States too have their own official languages. States too have their own official languages. Why the states have their own official languages? Because a particular language is spoken in that particular state. So all the offices work in that language, in their native language. They use that particular language which the majority population in their state uses while speaking and while writing. So all official matters, all official documents, all work which is done in the offices is done in that language which is the native language of the state. States too have their own official languages. Much of the government work takes place in the official language of the concerned state. Just now I told you the same thing. Unlike Sri Lanka, in Sri Lanka, which language is spoken? If you remember, in chapter 1 you have studied Sinhala is the language spoken in Sri Lanka. Unlike Sri Lanka, the leaders of our country adopted a very cautious attitude in spreading the use of Hindi. According to the constitution, the use of English for official purposes was to stop in 1965. Please pay attention, children, it is a very important thing. However, many non-Hindi speaking states demanded that the use of English to continue. So it was decided that in 1965, the use of English in all official documents should stop. But later on it was felt that all those states which are non-Hindi speaking states, they should continue to work in English because English was a common language which many other people knew. If they did not know Hindi, they knew English. Many non-Hindi speaking states demanded that the use of English continue. In Tamil Nadu, this movement took a violent form. The central government responded by agreeing to continue the use of English along with Hindi for official purposes. So when people started revolting, especially the people of Tamil Nadu and other places in southern India, when people started revolting, then it was decided that English along with Hindi should be allowed to continue to do all official work. Many critics think that this solution favored the English-speaking elite. Many critics, now there is always criticism when some suggestion is given. So when this suggestion was given that Hindi should continue with English, then some critics said that it is going to give favor to to those people who are English-speaking elite, English-speaking educated people in the society. Promotion of Hindi continues to be the official policy of the Government of India. Promotion of Hindi continues to be the official policy of the Government of India. Promotion does not mean that the central government can impose Hindi on states where people speak different language. The flexibility shown by the Indian political leaders helped our country avoid the kind of situation that Sri Lanka finds itself in. I am reading this paragraph again. Promotion does not mean that the central government can impose Hindi on states where people speak a different language. Only this line is important in this paragraph. Why it is important, I am telling you. It was said that promotion of Hindi continues to be the official policy. That means the government of India said that Hindi should be promoted. But Hindi should be promoted does not mean at all that all those people who speak any other language, who speak a different language, Hindi should be imposed on them. They should be forced to speak Hindi. No, not at all. They are given full freedom to write in their regional language, to speak their regional language, to give all exams which are all India level exams. They can give those exams in the regional language. Hindi along with English was allowed to be used for all official purposes, so that those people who are not Hindi speaking people, and if they know English, they can use English as their medium of communication or their medium of work in the offices. Hindi got recognition, but it was not imposed on the people. Those people who used to speak any other language, their mother tongue was some other language, they were free to use their language. Flexibility was adopted in this case. The third is center-state relations. Center-state relations. From the heading itself, we can guess center means the relationship between the central government and the various state governments, the center and the states. Restructuring the center-state relations in one more way in which federalism has been strengthened in practice. How the constitutional arrangements for power sharing work in reality depends to a large extent on how the ruling parties and leaders follow these arrangements. I will explain wherever I feel things have to be explained. For a long time, the same party ruled both at the center and in most of the states. This meant that the state governments did not exercise their rights as autonomous federal units. As and when the ruling party at the state level was different, the parties that ruled at the center tried to undermine the power of the state. Okay, now I am reading some of the lines again, then I will explain. For a long time, the same party ruled both at the center and in most of the states. Now, you must have seen in your own country that the ruling party is mainly, the members are of the BJP. BJP government is running the country. But in all other states of India, we don't have BJP government. Somewhere we have the Congress government as well. So it is written here that for a long time, the same party ruled both at the center and at the state. This meant that the state governments did not exercise their rights as autonomous federal units, as their free federal units. As and when the ruling party at the state level was different, as and when the ruling party at the state level was different, the parties that ruled at the center tried to undermine the power of the state. As and when the ruling party at the state level was different, the parties that ruled at the center tried to undermine the powers of the state. That means if the ruling party at the central level and the ruling party at the state level both were from the same party, then it was no problem. But if the central government saw that the state government is of some other party, then they tried to overpower them. They tried to undermine the power of the state. In those days, the central government would often misuse the constitution to dismiss the state governments that were